The meeting with the young leaders was unlike anything Amina had ever experienced. The room was bright, filled with people her age who spoke with confidence and curiosity. Some wore expensive clothes, others simple attire like hers, but none had her experience of being noticed by Sheikh Karim. She felt both nervous and excited. The leaders were polite but observant. They asked questions about her studies, her language skills, and her ideas about helping people. Amina answered carefully, her words honest and thoughtful. She did not try to impress anyone. She simply spoke what she knew and believed. Each answer showed her understanding and respect for knowledge. One young boy, dressed in a neat suit, asked, "How did you learn so much in such a short time?" Amina looked at him calmly. "I had help from my mother and I had a teacher. I listen, I read, and I try to understand. Learning is not about showing off. It is about listening and caring." Her words made a few of the other young leaders pause. They had expected clever answers, but what they heard was simple truth. Amina's honesty created a quiet respect in the room. After the questions, the young leaders discussed ideas about improving their city. They talked about education, cleanliness, health, and helping people in need. Amina joined the discussion carefully, offering suggestions when she could. Some ideas were small, like helping neighbors learn to read. Others were larger, like starting community gardens or library programs. Every suggestion was practical, showing that she understood both the problems and the solutions. The boy in the suit leaned forward. "You have very good ideas, Amina," he said sincerely. "Most people your age would not think about these things." Amina smiled faintly. "I think it is important to help in ways we can. Even small actions matter." By the end of the meeting, the young leaders had changed their view of her. Some were inspired, others were humbled, but all realized that knowledge and respect could come from unexpected places. Amina had shown them that courage and wisdom were not limited to wealth or status. When the meeting ended, Sheikh Karim entered the room quietly. His presence was calm but strong, and all eyes turned to him. He looked at Amina with a faint smile. "I see you have done well," he said softly. "You have listened, learned, and shared your knowledge. This is only the beginning." Amina bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Sheikh. I will do my best." The Sheikh nodded and turned to the young leaders. "Remember this," he said. "True wisdom is not measured by money, age, or position. It is measured by effort, respect, and honesty. Learn from her example." The room fell silent. The young leaders nodded, some ashamed that they had underestimated Amina, others inspired to work harder. After the meeting, Amina walked back to her small quarters with her mother. She felt tired but happy. Her mind was full of new ideas and new dreams. She had faced many eyes, spoken in front of many people, and had been understood. For the first time, she felt that the world was opening to her. That evening, Amina sat with her book once again. She reviewed the lessons from Omar and wrote her own notes in the margins. Every word felt important. She knew that the knowledge she gained was a tool, and how she used it would shape her future. Fatima watched her quietly. "You are growing so fast, Amina," she whispered. "I never imagined my little girl would sit in front of so many people and speak with such confidence." Amina looked up and smiled. "Mother, I am only learning. There is still so much to know. But I feel ready to try." Fatima nodded. She understood. This was not the end. It was a beginning. The lessons, the meetings, and the guidance of Sheikh Karim were preparing Amina for something greater than either of them had imagined. Outside, the night was calm. Stars shone brightly over the city. Amina closed her book, feeling a sense of peace and determination. She had faced challenges, learned lessons, and gained respect. Soon she would face even greater tests, but she was ready. Her journey had only just begun. Months passed since that first evening when Amina had spoken in front of Sheikh Karim. Her days were now filled with lessons, reading, and discussions. She studied languages, history, mathematics, and leadership. Every day she grew more confident and her mind became sharper. Yet she remained humble and thoughtful, always remembering her mother's words about respect and honesty. One morning, a message arrived from the Sheikh. It invited Amina to attend a gathering of influential people, businessmen, educators, and leaders from across the region. This time she would not only observe, she would participate and share her thoughts. Fatima's heart beat fast as she prepared her daughter. "Be careful, my child," she said. "But do not forget who you are. Speak your truth with respect." Amina nodded. She chose a simple, neat dress and kept her hair tied back. She carried her small book, which had become her guide and companion. As they entered the grand hall, Amina felt the weight of many eyes on her, but she did not waver. She remembered Sheikh Karim's words, "Wisdom and respect are more powerful than fear or wealth." The hall was impressive. Large chandeliers sparkled overhead, and polished tables lined the sides. Influential people were seated in rows, talking quietly. Many remembered the story of the maid's daughter who had answered the sheikh's question. Some whispered, curious and cautious. Others looked skeptical, unsure if the girl would speak wisely again. Sheikh Karim greeted them all, then turned his attention to Amina. "This is your moment," he said softly in Arabic. "Speak honestly and do not fear." Amina stepped forward. Her heart beat fast, but her voice was calm. "Thank you, Sheikh," she began. "I have learned much, but there is still more to know. I hope to share what I have learned to help others." The Sheikh smiled faintly. "Then begin," he said. Amina looked around the room. She spoke about the importance of education, honesty, and helping those in need. She told stories of people in her neighborhood, small acts of kindness, and the way knowledge could change lives. Her words were simple, but they carried meaning. Every listener felt her sincerity. A few people tried to interrupt, doubting her experience. But the Sheikh's steady gaze reminded them to listen. Amina continued without fear, answering questions politely and clearly. She showed that even someone who had little wealth could think deeply and offer ideas that mattered. By the end of her speech, the room was quiet, filled with respect. People nodded, some smiled, and others whispered to one another, realizing how wrong they had been to underestimate her. Sheikh Karim's eyes glowed with pride. "You have grown well, Amina," he said. "You have shown courage, respect, and wisdom. Today you have proven that knowledge and honesty are stronger than titles or riches. Remember this always." Amina bowed her head respectfully. "Thank you, Sheikh. I will try to always use what I have learned for good." After the gathering, many approached her quietly, offering kind words and advice. Some asked for guidance. Others simply wanted to learn from her example. Amina listened and responded carefully. She remembered her mother's teachings. Humility and respect matter more than praise. That evening, back in their small quarters, Fatima held her daughter's hands. "You have done so well," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "You have shown everyone that courage, respect, and learning are more important than wealth." Amina smiled, placing her small book beside her. "I only did what I had learned, Mother. I hope to do more, to help more people." Fatima hugged her tightly. She knew her daughter's journey had only begun. The world was larger and many challenges lay ahead, but Amina was ready. She had learned the most important lessons: respect, courage, honesty, and the power of knowledge. As the sun set over the city, Amina looked out the window. She saw the streets below, the markets, the people going about their lives. She knew that one day, she could make a difference in ways she had only dreamed of before. She smiled quietly, her heart full of hope and determination. From the maid's daughter who had answered a simple question in Arabic to a young woman ready to shape her world, Amina had proven that true wisdom and courage could come from the most unexpected places. And in that moment, the city, the sheikh, and her mother all knew. Her journey was just beginning, and it would be extraordinary. The morning sun shone brightly over Harvard University, lighting up the grand stone buildings and the long paths lined with green trees. Inside one of the oldest lecture halls, students filled the seats, chatting quietly. They were excited but also nervous because today was not an ordinary day. Today, Professor Brown, the most famous mathematics professor in the university, was going to present a puzzle. This puzzle was rumored to be impossible. Many students had tried similar problems before, but none had succeeded. The challenge was well known, and everyone knew it would take a sharp mind and clever thinking to even understand it. Professor Brown walked to the front of the room, his black coat brushing the floor. He was tall and serious, and his eyes seemed to look at every corner of the room at once. In his hand he held a piece of chalk. He tapped it on the blackboard, making a soft sound, and waited for the room to fall completely silent. All eyes turned to him. The students stopped whispering, their attention fully on the professor. He wrote a long puzzle carefully on the blackboard. It was filled with numbers, symbols, and patterns. Then he turned to the audience, his voice calm but firm. "This problem has been called impossible," he said. "Even the best students cannot solve it in less than an hour. Some have tried for days without success. Today I present it to you. Whoever can solve it will prove that nothing is truly impossible." Murmurs filled the room. The students leaned forward, some with excitement, others with worry. They glanced at the complicated puzzle and then at each other. Many had studied hard and thought they were prepared. But the words, impossible and even the best cannot solve it, made them doubt themselves. In the back of the room, sitting on a small chair, was a young girl named Mia. She was only 9 years old. Her brown hair was tied neatly in a ponytail, and her small hands held a notebook and pencil. Unlike the students around her, Mia did not look nervous. Her eyes were wide with curiosity. She loved challenges, especially puzzles and riddles. Numbers and patterns fascinated her. While others felt fear, she felt excitement. She had traveled a long way to see this puzzle, and she wanted to try it for herself. Mia opened her notebook and began to write. She did not rush. Instead, she carefully looked at each part of the problem. She noticed small details that others might have ignored. Her pencil moved smoothly over the paper as she made small notes and sketches. She was quiet, but her mind worked very fast. Professor Brown walked slowly along the front of the room, watching the students. Some scribbled quickly, trying random solutions. Some shook their heads and whispered to their friends. Mia, however, sat calmly, her eyes fixed on the blackboard. She did not talk to anyone. She did not look at the other students. All her focus was on understanding the puzzle. After a few minutes, a student raised his hand. "Professor Brown, I think I understand this part," he said, pointing at a section of the problem. Another student shouted, "No, that cannot work." Soon, a few students began arguing, each convinced they had the answer. Professor Brown listened and smiled quietly. "Remember," he said, "this problem is called impossible for a reason. Don't rush. Think carefully." Mia watched the chaos quietly. She did not need to argue. She already had a few ideas forming in her mind. The puzzle was difficult, but she liked hard puzzles. They were like a game to her. She thought about the problem from every angle. She checked the numbers, the symbols, and the small patterns hidden in the details. Slowly, she began to see something that no one else noticed. It was small and subtle, but it felt important. While the students panicked and tried to compete, Mia smiled softly. She liked the challenge, and she believed in herself. She knew that sometimes adults overlooked simple solutions because they were too focused on making things complicated. Mia was small and she was young, but she had a clear mind. She was ready to prove that even a 9-year-old could face a puzzle that others called impossible. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, but Mia did not notice it. Her pencil moved and her eyes shone with concentration. She felt a strange excitement in her chest. Today, something extraordinary might happen. And that was the beginning of the story that no one in that lecture hall would ever forget. The classroom was buzzing with nervous energy. Students whispered to each other, trying to solve the puzzle. Many scratched their heads, frowning at the blackboard. Some flipped through notebooks filled with equations and diagrams. The puzzle looked impossible to them. No matter how hard they tried, the answer seemed to slip further away. Professor Brown walked among the students, watching silently. He had given many challenging problems in his career, but today he was curious to see who could rise to this one. In the middle of the room, a young girl named Mia sat quietly. She was only 9 years old, but her mind worked faster than many adults. She watched as other students made mistakes, overlooked small details, or grew frustrated. She noticed that most of them were trying to solve the puzzle in a complicated way. They were looking for patterns that were not there, and making the problem seem much harder than it actually was. Mia, however, saw something different. She looked carefully at the numbers and symbols and asked herself simple questions. Her pencil moved across her notebook, not hurriedly, but carefully. She drew small sketches, connected lines, and wrote down small notes. She checked her work repeatedly, making sure she understood each step. While the other students were panicking, Mia felt calm and focused. She liked the challenge. For her, the word impossible was only a suggestion, not a rule. Professor Brown paused near the front, observing the students' struggles. One student threw his pencil down in frustration. "I can't do it," he muttered. Another shook her head. "This problem is impossible," she said, echoing the professor's words. Many of them were convinced they would fail. They were experts in mathematics, yet the puzzle seemed beyond their reach. They did not notice the small hints hidden in the puzzle's details. Mia, on the other hand, noticed the hints. They were subtle, almost invisible to anyone who was in a hurry or too nervous to think clearly. She smiled quietly. She realized that solving this puzzle would not require complex formulas or long calculations. Instead, it needed careful observation, patience, and creativity. Mia liked puzzles like that. She enjoyed looking for small connections that others ignored. She felt confident, even though she was much younger than everyone else in the room. The clock ticked steadily, reminding everyone that time was passing. Some students began to panic even more. They whispered, asked for hints, or copied each other's ideas. Their frustration grew and they lost focus. Professor Brown noticed this. He knew the puzzle was designed not only to test intelligence, but also patience and persistence. Most adults and older students gave up when a challenge became too stressful. Mia, however, did not give up.
She kept thinking, kept writing, and kept observing. She noticed something interesting.
A small pattern in the numbers repeated itself in a way that no one else had seen. It was subtle, but it made sense. Her eyes lit up with excitement. She tested the idea in her notebook. Carefully, she followed each step and checked if it fit the puzzle. Slowly, she began to see a solution forming. It was clever and simple at the same time. Other students noticed her calm expression. They glanced at her notebook and whispered, "Is she really solving it?" Someone asked. Professor Brown looked surprised too. He had been watching her quietly, sensing that her approach was different. He smiled faintly, curious about what the small girl could accomplish. Mia's heart beat a little faster. She was close to discovering the answer. She did not feel pressure. Instead, she felt excitement and joy. The puzzle was no longer impossible in her mind. She had seen the path to the solution. It was like a hidden door slowly opening, revealing a world of ideas that only she had noticed. As the minutes passed, Mia continued to work. Her pencil moved with purpose, connecting numbers, testing possibilities, and writing down her thoughts. While the others doubted themselves and gave up, she kept going. She believed that every problem had a solution if one looked carefully and thought creatively. By the end of the hour, Mia had written a complete plan in her notebook. She looked at it one more time, checking each step. Her eyes shone with confidence. She had done something that even the most experienced students in the room had not managed. She had found a way through the puzzle not by rushing or copying, but by observing, thinking, and trusting herself. Professor Brown noticed her calm smile and leaned slightly closer. He had no idea yet that Mia was about to prove that age and size did not matter when it came to intelligence and creativity. The lecture hall was quiet except for the sound of pencils scratching on paper. Students were absorbed in the puzzle, but most of them were still frustrated. They had tried many complicated methods, writing long equations and crossing out countless ideas, yet the solution seemed far away. Professor Brown walked slowly between the desks, observing the students' work. He had seen many bright minds struggle, but today, he noticed something unusual. One small girl was completely calm and focused, and she seemed to be thinking differently from everyone else. Mia, only 9 years old, sat near the back of the room with her notebook open. She was quiet, almost invisible among the older students, but her mind was active and alert. She had studied the puzzle carefully, not rushing, but examining each detail. While others were distracted by complicated numbers and formulas, Mia asked herself simple questions. She looked for connections that were easy to miss and patterns that seemed unimportant to others. Her eyes moved across the blackboard, scanning for clues that could lead her closer to the answer. She noticed a small repetition in the numbers on the board. It was subtle, almost hidden, but it felt meaningful. Mia leaned closer to her notebook and drew a tiny diagram, connecting points that seemed unrelated at first. She traced lines, circled numbers, and wrote small notes next to each step. Slowly, she began to see the puzzle in a new way. It was like looking at a picture from the side instead of straight on. The solution was not about force or complexity. It was about careful observation and creative thinking. Around her, the older students were growing anxious. Some muttered to themselves, tapping their pencils nervously. Others leaned over their notebooks, trying to copy ideas from neighbors or erase mistakes and start again. Professor Brown observed them with quiet satisfaction. He knew the puzzle was not just about intelligence. It tested patience, focus, and perspective. Most students, even brilliant ones, allowed their frustration to cloud their thinking. Mia, however, remained calm. She did not compare herself to others or doubt her abilities. She trusted her mind and her instincts. Mia paused for a moment, closing her eyes to think. She replayed each small observation in her head, imagining how the pieces could fit together. Then she opened her eyes and started writing again. She tested her ideas carefully step by step, making sure each part made sense. She smiled quietly to herself as she noticed more connections forming. The puzzle was beginning to make sense in a way that others had not seen. Professor Brown, curious about her progress, walked a little closer. He watched her work silently, intrigued by the concentration and confidence she displayed. There was something different about her approach. She did not rush or panic. She looked carefully, questioned quietly, and followed her thoughts with patience. It was a style of thinking that adults often overlooked. They were used to complicated methods, but Mia was finding a simple path that led straight to the answer. Time passed, and the students around her continued to struggle. Some were exhausted and some had given up entirely. Mia did not notice them. She was focused on the tiny details that mattered most. Every number, every symbol, and every line on the blackboard was part of her plan. She connected ideas that seemed unrelated at first and discovered patterns that were hidden in plain sight. She felt excitement rising inside her. She knew she was close to a breakthrough. Slowly, a sense of clarity began to grow in Mia's mind. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, forming a complete picture. She traced her pencil along the final lines in her notebook and checked each step carefully. Everything fit perfectly. Her eyes sparkled with delight as she realized she had understood the puzzle in a way no one else had. Mia took a deep breath and leaned back slightly, looking at her notebook. She had solved the puzzle in her mind, but she had not yet written the final solution on paper. She wanted to be precise and confident. Her heart beat with a mixture of excitement and calm. She knew this was a moment she would remember forever. Around her, the room continued its quiet chaos, but Mia's small corner was filled with a sense of order and understanding. She had discovered something important. When others see impossibility, careful observation and clear thinking can reveal hidden solutions. She smiled softly to herself, ready for the next step, proving to everyone that the impossible could be solved. Mia felt a quiet excitement in her chest. For minutes, she had been examining the puzzle carefully, connecting patterns and testing small ideas. Each step she wrote in her notebook brought her closer to understanding the solution. While the other students continued to struggle and frown at the blackboard, Mia's small pencil moved steadily, her hand guided by clear thought and determination. She felt a sense of calm and confidence. She was ready for the breakthrough, the moment when the impossible would start to feel possible. She leaned closer to her notebook, her eyes tracing each line she had drawn. She had noticed a small detail in the puzzle that everyone else had overlooked. It was hidden in plain sight, simple but clever. Mia realized that the puzzle did not require complex formulas or long calculations. It only required seeing the problem differently, noticing what others had ignored. She tested her idea carefully. Step by step, she followed the logic, making sure everything fit perfectly. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. The pieces connected beautifully. The pattern she had discovered led directly to the solution. Mia felt a thrill of joy. She had done it. She had solved the puzzle in her mind. The impossible was now beginning to look very possible. Her small hands trembled slightly as she wrote the final steps in her notebook. She checked each one carefully, ensuring there were no mistakes. Around the room, the atmosphere was tense. Students were frustrated, some rubbing their foreheads, some staring blankly at the board. Many had given up or were close to giving up. Professor Brown watched quietly from the front. He had seen a few students approach small breakthroughs before, but none had managed to solve this particular puzzle. He noticed Mia's calm expression and the focused way she worked. There was something different about her. He walked a few steps closer, curious to see what the small girl was doing. Mia looked up briefly, noticing the professor. She felt a little nervous for a moment, but she quickly returned to her work. She had to finish her solution carefully. She did not want to rush. The breakthrough was exciting, but it had to be complete and accurate. She smiled softly as she realized the logic worked perfectly from start to finish. Every part of the puzzle made sense and the answer was clear. She wrote the final line in her notebook and took a deep breath. Mia's eyes scanned her work one last time. Yes, it was correct. She had solved what everyone else had called impossible. The thrill of discovery filled her heart. She felt proud, not just because she had the answer, but because she had remained calm and confident when others doubted themselves. She had trusted her mind and her instincts, and it had paid off. Professor Brown stepped closer, noticing the small smile on Mia's face. He bent down slightly to look at her notebook. His eyes widened in surprise as he followed her logic. Every step was correct, and the solution was elegant and clever. He could hardly believe that a 9-year-old had solved a puzzle that had challenged some of the brightest students in Harvard. He took a step back, shaking his head in astonishment. Around the room, some students noticed the professor's reaction and looked toward Mia. They saw her small figure quietly holding her notebook, her eyes bright with excitement. Whispers began to spread. "Did she solve it?" someone asked. Another student gasped.
"She is 9 years old."
The room grew quiet as curiosity and surprise replaced frustration. Everyone wanted to see her solution. Mia felt her heart beat faster. She had done it. The puzzle that seemed impossible to everyone else had been solved by her careful observation, patience, and creative thinking. She realized something important. Age and size did not determine the power of a mind. Anyone could achieve great things if they stayed focused, trusted themselves, and looked at problems from a fresh perspective. Professor Brown smiled, amazed and impressed. He had always believed in challenges, but Mia's breakthrough went beyond anything he had expected. The impossible, it seemed, could be made possible by determination and intelligence, no matter who you were. Mia looked up at the blackboard, then at her notebook, feeling proud and excited. Today, she had proved something extraordinary, and the world around her was about to notice. Mia's heart was beating faster than ever, but it was not from fear. It was excitement and determination. She had solved the puzzle that everyone in the room had called impossible. Her small notebook held the steps carefully written and checked. Now came the moment she had been waiting for, sharing her solution in front of Professor Brown and all the students. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She looked around the room. Students were watching her, some in curiosity, others in surprise. The professor had noticed her confident expression, and his eyebrows were raised in anticipation. Mia raised her small hand slightly, feeling a little nervous, but knowing she had to try. "Professor Brown," she said softly, "I think I solved it." The room went completely silent. It was unusual for anyone to speak up in such a confident way, especially a 9-year-old girl. The students leaned forward, whispering to each other. Some looked doubtful, while others were curious to see what Mia would do. Professor Brown smiled gently, encouraging her. "Please, Mia," he said, "come forward and explain your solution." Mia's legs felt a little shaky as she stood up. She carried her notebook in both hands and walked to the front of the room. Every eye in the lecture hall followed her small figure. Some students exchanged surprised glances. They had not expected a child to challenge a puzzle designed for Harvard students. Mia reached the front and looked at the blackboard. She felt a deep sense of calm now. She had checked every step in her notebook. She knew her answer was correct. She opened her notebook carefully and began to explain. "First," she said clearly, "I looked at the numbers in a different way. I noticed a pattern that repeats, but it is hidden. Many students try to solve the problem by using complex formulas, but the solution is simpler if we watch carefully." She pointed to her notes and explained each step slowly, making sure everyone could understand. The students listened quietly, their whispers fading as Mia spoke. Her voice was soft, but it carried confidence. She explained the connections she had found and showed how the puzzle could be solved using clear logic. Each line she wrote in her notebook matched perfectly with the pattern on the blackboard. Step by step, she demonstrated her reasoning, never rushing, never skipping anything. Professor Brown leaned closer, examining her notebook. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. Every calculation, every step was correct. The solution made sense, and it was clever. He felt a mixture of surprise and admiration. He had always believed in the power of thinking, but Mia's approach was extraordinary. She had found a simple path where others had looked for complex ones. The room was silent except for Mia's clear explanation. Students whispered to each other, astonished that someone so young could solve a puzzle that had challenged even the smartest minds in the university. Some students looked at their own work and realized they had missed the small details that Mia had noticed. Others simply watched, amazed and inspired. As Mia continued, her confidence grew. She explained how she had tested each idea carefully and checked every step. She described how she had discovered patterns that seemed hidden at first, and connected them to find the final answer. Her words were simple, but the logic was brilliant. Everyone could follow her thinking and understand why her solution worked. When she finished, Mia closed her notebook and looked at Professor Brown. She felt a mixture of pride and relief. She had done it. She had shared her solution with everyone in the room. Professor Brown took a deep breath and smiled warmly. "Mia," he said, "you have done something extraordinary. This is correct and it is remarkable. You have proven that age does not limit intelligence or creativity. Well done." The students around her began to clap, some rising to their feet. Mia felt a warm happiness in her chest. She had faced a challenge, solved it, and shared her solution with courage. The moment was unforgettable. She had not only solved a puzzle but had also inspired everyone in the room to believe that determination, focus, and careful thinking could achieve incredible results. Mia's small hands held the notebook tightly and she smiled quietly. She realized that courage was not about being the biggest or the oldest. It was about believing in yourself and taking a step forward even when others doubted you. Today, she had taken that step, and the world was watching. The room remained quiet for a moment after Mia finished explaining her solution. Professor Brown stood still, staring at her notebook and then back at the blackboard. His eyes were wide and his mind raced to process what he had just witnessed. He had seen many talented students in his career, but he had never seen someone so young solve a problem that had challenged even the brightest minds at Harvard. The realization slowly sank in. Mia had not only solved the puzzle, she had done it with clarity, logic, and creativity that exceeded expectation. The students around her were also stunned. Some could not believe their eyes. A 9-year-old had just solved a puzzle they had spent hours trying to complete. Their notebooks were full of crossed-out attempts and complicated formulas, yet Mia had approached it differently. She had observed carefully, noticed subtle patterns, and trusted her instincts. Slowly, whispers filled the room. "She did it," one student said. "I can't believe it," another murmured. Eyes turned from her notebook to the blackboard, following her steps and then back to her small, confident face. Professor Brown cleared his throat. "Everyone pay attention," he said. His voice carried authority but also awe. "What Mia has done here is extraordinary. She has solved a problem that has been considered impossible for generations. Her approach is simple yet brilliant. It reminds us all that understanding does not always come from complicated methods. Sometimes clarity comes from careful observation and thinking differently." Some students began to understand what had happened. They looked at their own work and realized where they had gone wrong. They had been trying to force solutions, following patterns that did not exist. Mia, however, had taken the time to see the puzzle clearly, to notice the small details that others overlooked. The students felt a mixture of surprise, admiration, and even inspiration. If a 9-year-old could do this, they thought, maybe they could approach challenges differently too. Professor Brown walked slowly toward Mia. He stopped beside her and knelt slightly to meet her eyes. "Mia," he said softly, "you have reminded us all of something very important. Intelligence is not only about age or experience. It is also about curiosity, focus, and persistence. You have shown courage in thinking differently and believing in yourself. This is remarkable." Mia's small hands clutched her notebook and a soft smile appeared on her face. She felt proud, but she also felt happy that her work could inspire others. The students began to clap, softly at first and then louder. Some stood up, cheering for her achievement. Cameras flashed as a few had been recording the event. Professor Brown smiled, raising his hands to quiet the room. "Let us all take a moment to reflect on what we have learned today. Mia has demonstrated that problems labeled as impossible are only impossible until someone looks at them from a new perspective. Creativity and courage can overcome even the most difficult challenges." Mia's friends, who had come to watch her, whispered excitedly. "She's amazing," one said. "I can't believe she did it," another added. Mia felt her heart swell with happiness. She realized that solving the puzzle was only part of the achievement. Sharing it, explaining it, and inspiring others was just as important. She had shown that determination, careful thinking, and belief in oneself could accomplish extraordinary things. Professor Brown turned to the entire room again. "I hope you all remember this moment. Mia has proven something that goes beyond this classroom. She has shown that no challenge is too great if you approach it with patience, creativity, and courage. Today we have witnessed a truly historic achievement." Mia looked around the room, noticing the amazed faces of the students. She felt a sense of pride and calm. She had faced the impossible, trusted her mind, and succeeded. But more than that, she had helped others see the power of thinking differently. She realized that this moment would stay with her forever. As the applause continued, Mia felt a deep sense of joy. She had solved a puzzle that seemed impossible, and in doing so, she had inspired everyone around her. She understood something very important. Intelligence and courage are not measured by age, size, or experience. They are measured by curiosity, persistence, and belief in oneself. Today, Mia had proved that the impossible could become possible,